All right. I'm going to keep that poll open in case everyone's still working on their response, just for another minute or two. But we are going to get going for today's webinar. Thank you for everyone who is here today. The webinar is Ensuring Academic Integrity and Higher Ed Assessments, a collaborative webinar between digital ed and school year. A few things I want to mention just before we start. If you do have any questions, you will see in the bottom or the top of your Zoom bar, depending on your layout, a Q&A icon. This is where we will take questions throughout the webinar. So feel free to type them there. And what we will do is we will save them and respond to them all at the end of the webinar itself. Now, depending on the questions and how many we get, if we can't answer them all live today, we will reach out to you directly through an email or set up another Zoom to answer after the webinar itself. But for today, I believe we're on the hosts for today. On the next slide, we have two people who will be presenting. On the left-hand side of my screen there, you see Christina Perdiculias. I'll give a quick bio for her. She is our COO and president at Digital Ed. So leveraging her experience in executive roles in the tech sector, she spearheads Digital Ed strategic direction, leadership, and product management. Christina has orchestrated numerous successful product launches from desktop engineering simulation tools to enterprise security SaaS solutions. She holds a master's degree in engineering and in data analytics, and she is also a licensed professional engineer, underscoring her commitment to driving innovation and excellence in the technology landscape. And on the right-hand side, we have Wim Grass. He is the founder and CEO of School Year, and his short biography is he's dedicated to reshaping how universities deliver digital exams. School Year's safe exam workspace allows institutions to run high-stakes exams at scale on students' own devices through a bring your own device environment. By locking down devices and blocking unauthorized access, they safeguard exam integrity while giving educators full flexibility. From browser-based assessment platforms like Mobius to any real-world applications like Excel, R, or MATLAB. And we will talk about that more as we go through this presentation today. So with that, I'm going to pass things over to Christina. And in parallel, I will also end the poll. So thank you for everyone who responded to the question today so far. Christina, over to you.
Thank you, Johnny, and welcome to all of you joining us today. Just move the, there we go. So we're going to start by referring back to the Insight survey that our team released earlier this year. We had over 350 educators respond from around the world. So those of you that did respond that are on the call today, thank you so much. And thank you to all of you that responded. And they responded across different teaching levels in higher ed, primarily spanning STEM subjects, but with about 15% of them also spanning non-STEM subjects. From this, we learned a lot about the current environment in education landscape for higher ed, but we also found that there were lingering questions and curiosities from a large proportion of the respondents across all the demographics, and in most of them revolved around academic integrity, and in particular, the rise of the use of AI globally, which was the inspiration of that. So this webinar today. So results from this insight survey coincided with a growing wave of concern that we saw around managing the use of AI in general, and things like ethical concerns being cited, issues with integrating technology with the existing schools' policies and processes, and even the heightened risk of plagiarism, among many, many other pieces that were communicated to us. So as a result, we felt it was time for us to gather our thoughts, our experience, and of course the expertise from our Mobius community, along with our partners at School Year, to focus on academic integrity in general and find ways to discuss the methods and the approaches to discourage and guard against unethical behavior from students. Now, we look at this topic in the same way that IT organizations approach cybersecurity. There isn't just one solution that protects against all the kinds of behaviors that are undesired. There needs to be a layered approach to these protections that provide the appropriate safeguard against the activity at the appropriate time. So within the context of higher education, we look at these layers as additive in nature that allow you to customize the level of protection against the unethical behavior that we're talking about, starting with trust and really That's the first layer that we look at. And the intent of trust here is by providing clear communication of the academic integrity policies that are expected by students so that they are fully aware of what is expected, and that in that way unintentional violations do not occur. And we'll get into that in a little more detail soon. From there, you can make blind copying entirely ineffective by ensuring each student receives a unique question. And that is what we're referring to when we talk about this variety layer. And then another layer here that can be achieved is by deterring the undesired behavior by making it harder to cheat, just finding ways for it to make it something that isn't as easy to accomplish. And then this final layer that we're talking about that we'll speak in more detail with our school year partners is this layer of prevention that can be enacted for when the stakes are so high that violations are especially egregious. Now, this scaled approach to academic integrity provides you with the tools to dial up and dial down this level of defense against the common activities based on the needs that you have and based on the type of activity you're asking of your students. So I'll start with the first layer, clarity. Now, before I go into the approach itself, I'd just like to share some insights that help me better understand the problem. And I've shared them with in other presentations I've done with some of our partners globally, but hopefully to illustrate the same to you, because I did find it quite interesting. So we found this survey where they asked students and professors a very simple question for each of the behaviors listed at the bottom here. Is this cheating? Yes or no? And the results were very interesting. As you would expect, some behaviors were clearly cheating. Both students and professors were largely in agreement. Blind plagiarism, copying work, contracting, cheating by hiring a company to do the work for you. Those were pretty blatant, and I think everyone agreed that this is all cheating. But some others were not as clear, and this is where the insights really began to take shape for us, where instructors largely felt some activities like working together on a graded activity where they weren't given permission to do so, or changing and manipulating data. They saw this as clearly cheating in their eyes, but students certainly did not think so. So you can immediately see now why this could be problematic when you're trying to enforce an academic integrity policy, or even going as far as disciplining a student for these behaviors. It's very hard to do so if it's unclear what is considered cheating and what isn't. And using AI in graded work seemed to be even more problematic, or at least uncertain, because it carried this conflict of uncertainty with it. Somehow the professors thought this was more acceptable than students did. And we can't infer anything else from this. The questions didn't go any more detailed from this survey, but what it does provide us is a prompt for further exploration and further discussion with educators and students alike. What really is the appropriate use of AI in education settings, which is a big question to ask, and there's lots to be answered, lots of opportunity, just as much as challenges to go forward. Now, I only share these results to underscore the main point here is that simply educating students on what is acceptable and what, very importantly, is unacceptable behavior has really shown to reduce the occurrences of cheating compared to the baseline. And this goes upwards of 48%. Now, we found one particular study that I found quite interesting from a Canadian university that by forcing a mandatory academic integrity program, just a quick course that was done within there right at the start of the program itself, and this was for introductory business courses, it reduced their overall reported cheating by 49% in the first year. And then, in the second year, it was 18% compared to baseline. So the latter does suggest that students need a reminder, and that it isn't just a problem that's to address in first year as they enter higher education. The education of academic integrity is likely something that needs to be repeated throughout their journey and as technologies get introduced, just like we're seeing with AI. The types of things that are happening today, it is unclear what is considered unethical behavior. So we need to make sure that we make it very clear to students. And that helps as a first layer. Just let's be clear so that students know exactly what they can or can't do. So now any violation becomes less intentional. Now let's move to the next layer, variety. And this approach is employed in the scenarios where you may not be concerned with students collaborating on the methods and processes to find the solution. Maybe they'll help each other with homework, but you also don't want to waste your time marking a blatantly copied submission from your students, and certainly don't want to give them credit for work they didn't do at all. Just, same question, answers, just copy it off of a friend. This is an approach that today many schools use, where there's variations of the same assignment, same test, or examination that's distributed to students, maybe one of five. We have a lot of partners today that create a number of versions of their assessment before they use Mobius, and that is intended to avoid them blindly copying off of one another and at least giving some variation of what a student receives. Now, presenting students with questions that have parameters changed, and offering different questions of similar ilk and difficulty that are randomly assigned to each student is a really effective way to achieve this. It is harder to do and harder to administer if you aren't, and grade, if you aren't using a tool like Mobius. So this is one reason why we advocate for this quite a bit. And when we do onboarding and training for our partners, this is an area that we focus on quite a bit. Now, really quickly to put this in practice, we'll start with using a parameterization to vary a question. So you can use the same tools that provide students with the option to try a different version of a question in homework and taking those relevant parameters from the example. And then on top of that, building out the algorithm to vary things like mass, volume, pressure, and temperature within the ranges that are appropriate to you. And from this, you have a single question that now has infinite variations, assuming, of course, you don't constrain the ranges too much in the way that you build your algorithm. Now, another facet of variety is the ability to randomize what is presented to students, but within a controlled environment where the instructor itself can curate the groups of questions that are of similar difficulty, and that are also designed to assess the same competencies and skills. You can set appropriate policies on top of this that prescribe the number of questions that are given to the student from a group. And then combining this with parameterized elements, you can pretty much ensure that every student will receive a unique question, assignment, test, or exam, and it'll be automatically graded so you won't be exposed to the additional burden of managing the logistics of giving students a different test and also grading them. And this is the benefit of adding variety as this extra layer of protection. Now, for this final layer that I'll go through before we hand it off to the school year team, we'd like to believe that knowing that doing something wrong is enough of a deterrent for students. But, studies confirm that what you probably already know as educators, there's always going to be some students that are just going to try no matter what you put in front of them. Doesn't matter what the deterrent is. It doesn't matter what the challenge is. They're going to find a way to get around whatever you're doing, or they're going to work really hard to do that. And there's about equal number of students that absolutely will never do it no matter what. They just get so nervous and anxious at the thought of doing this. They couldn't possibly imagine doing it. But then there's the ones in the middle. And the students that are tempted, about 73% of them, based on the study that we found here, whom can go either way, depending on convenience and risk. And those are the ones that we want to influence in a positive direction. How do we deter them from making the step to dishonest behavior in an academic setting? Now, deterrence can take on many forms, starting from disciplinary actions and consequences that are very undesirable to the student, which would then challenge, what is the reward for this risk that I'm taking? But this can also extend to technology leverage deterrence, like creating restrictive policies around the use of exam aids, adding time limits for completing the exam, limiting how many attempts they have if it's an assessment that might not be an exam level. But you can lead that all the way up to this concept of a full screen student browser that would force the student to actively find a way to go around the safeguard. And it makes that common excuse of, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Well, it's harder to do if you have to do a lot of work to go around that safeguard. So these deterrents force the student to do something with intent, which is the key in applying a deterrent to a student rather than it being an unintended element that they achieve. So that's a really quick first pass of the elements that we're talking of, those first layers. I'm going to continue with a brief demonstration of how you can build in these two layers, these last two layers that I talked through with Mobius as an example. So I'll start off with just showing a parameterized question, and we'll navigate to one that's already created here. Now, when we look at how this is structured, the question itself is authored with some parameters denoted by a $ in Mobius in front of those chosen parameters. Now, going with this question and what supports it is the algorithm that defines each of the parameters and within the ranges that you specify, which could then also be used in the feedback that the student sees when submitting their answer. And this too can be fully customized with any information that you're looking for. Now, these three elements together, looking at the feedback, again, then moving on to the algorithm, and then the question itself, they're tied together to build an algorithmically generated and graded question. So when we now can view that from the student's perspective in the preview, and when we refresh the question, that's where we can see the ability to provide these infinite variations of a particular question, all within the same structure. Now, if we go back and take a look at what this might look like from an overall assessment perspective and what these questions look like within that structure, we can see an example of what the assignment is, but looking at these overall questions, you can see that in this example, I've added 10 specific questions where every student would get the same question, but with a different varied parameter. And you can see the question that we just explored here in there. But this assessment will have about 10 points assigned with one, but we can add this extra layer of variety by adding this question group. And here, this question group is intended to pick questions. In this case, I'm taking it from a practice test. There's 30 questions in here. They cover the entire unit. The intent here is just build a question bank or a pool where random questions can be presented. So out of 30, we can set a policy here and decide that within this assessment, I'm going to have 10 structured questions that I give to everyone, but now I'm going to create a little section here where it'll be randomly selected from this collection that I've curated. And in this case, we're just going to show 5 of them, and we're actually going to up the points as well and decide that 50% of this assessment will be allotted to the points for these randomly generated questions. Randomly selected questions from this pool. And they're also parameterized. So now you have yet another layer of not only will every single question be presented to students in a way that is different, it will be unique. Now, the deterrent layer comes across with these policies. So you can dial up or down again what the higher stakes that you have. But when you really want to do this deterrent, there's this layer where you can talk through this full screen mode for the student, where if you're doing this full screen browser mode and the student navigates away, the proctor will be notified and they'll need authorization to continue. That's one layer of a deterrent that goes on top of it. And you'll see that there's additional policies that can allow to add other constraints like time of day, number of times that they can take the test or the assessment, really any variety that you need. And there are also tools to ensure that you can save these as sets or as a label that you have for different types of assessment, depending on the level of protection you need. Again, dialing up or down the protection. And then from the student's perspective, you'll see that when they enter the assessment themselves, it immediately gives you the indication of what they're about to go into. And they know right away that, okay, if you switch applications and go outside of this, you'll need authorization to continue. And that's what we mean by a deterrent. So that is just a brief look at how Mobius can realize those first few layers of this defense in depth approach. I'm going to pass it over to Wim, our partner and co-presenter from School Year. We'll discuss the fourth and final layer of protection.
Yes, thank you, Christina. So the next layer of defense is the prevention layer. So that's maybe the last layer, the layer of the group of the students that really want to find a way to circumvent all the deterrent and all the layers. So the prevention layer is the layer that really stops cheating before it can happen. So compared to monitoring the screen, where you might be able to find a way in the background or to go around it, with prevention, you really prevent all unauthorized actions. So you block students opening other tabs, you block students opening other applications, you block them opening other tools. It's really to make sure that students are not by accident can open other content than the platform Mobius itself. Why is, let me click the screen, still working. Yeah, so why is prevention becoming more important is, I think, and this is already happening for a couple of years, is two main trends. So um, the digital transition, of course, means that more assessments are online, more digital. And it also means that most are delivered on personal devices. So devices outside of the control of the institution. So that brings another dimension to it, that it's hard to actually do any, you know, um, prevention methods there. And the other thing is that we're seeing is that cheating becomes more sophisticated. It is getting more easy to use a tool that helps you finding answers. And this was actually before the whole AI bubble that came, and we were in the middle of it because we are already doing this for 6 years now. And with the introduction of AI, things changed because before, if you, for example, would use a deterrent or you monitoring the screen of the student, um, they had to do it quickly, right? If you could have access to Google, you had to find the answer, look it up, or you had to text your peers and find the answer on the question. But the problem now is you have the answer, immediately. You have the results immediately. And the challenge here is that AI can be configured. These tools can be configured in a way that you cannot even see it. It is almost like a keystroke. You copy paste the answer right away. You copy the question, you have the answer right away. And that's what we're fighting every day. That's our bread and butter today. And I spoke to the other day to a dean of education at an institution in Europe who said to me, "Well, yeah, this is going so fast, the whole AI thing. I like prevention, but this is only temporary because this AI is going so fast. You cannot do something. You cannot do something with that." Um, but I think that's not true because yes, AI is going fast, and they're popping up AI tools every day. Um, but AI is not changing the way how a computer is working, right? On a lower level, we can say to a computer, you are only allowed to use this application. You are only allowed to use this website. And that will not change that easily. So you can configure and you can actually prevent AI tools and other ways of cheating. Um, Still very good. So let me go to the next slide. Yes. So what we've done is we have actually built a methodology of fraud prevention, and I think it's also some kind of layers. You prevent as much as possible, but not everything you can prevent. So you need to do also some detections if one of the prevent mechanisms are not working or are circumvented. And in the end, you also have to respond quickly. So let me explain them separately. So I think what makes a good prevention, to start with the first, is I think four principles. We following the four principles. The first one is separation. You do want to make sure that you're not using a normal browser. So the platform you're using, like Mobius, the assessment, the content of the exam should not be opened in a normal browser like Chrome or Edge or any other browser. Because in that browser, these browsers are built for freedom, not built for exams. They can configure anything. They can use extensions. They can use any configuration in the browser. So it's important that you open the content in a completely dedicated exam browser, separate browser, like the SchoolSafe exam browser. The next principle is restricting. You really have to shut down the whole internet and only allow what can be used. So you do want to allow Mobius, maybe some other websites, but everything needs to be fully disabled. So you cannot use any AI tools that, for example, use the internet. So this is already a very important move to, prevent most of the AI tools, most of the cheating attempts, most of the remote access software, most of the communication apps, right? So you really have to control the internet. Then I think it's important, and this is a very complex step for us, but it's important to isolate files and other third-party applications. So if you use, for example, Möbius together with Microsoft Office, RStudio, any application, more in an open book setting, it's important that you don't save the files on the student laptop itself, because that opens the door for cheating a big time. Students have, first of all, access to their personal notes, personal file explorer, but also inside these applications, there is multiple ways to reach the internet, to use embedded AI tools. It's not possible. So the way how you prevent this in a proper way is to virtualize applications and isolate files. And then the last, and I think this is also relevant for most institutions, is that there's no way around that you have a mixed device campus. Everyone has different devices. You have managed, unmanaged, bring your device, Mac, Windows. It's important to get a consistent prevention on all devices. So you can actually, you have to control that on all devices as well. So the second step of the wheel of our methodology is to, you can have a very good prevention, but what if one of the mechanisms, the block mechanisms, doesn't work or is spoofed by a student? So what we've done, and this was also one of the requirements of our early adopters, is that we need to see if the full screen is broken. We don't want to have a discussion. So what we do is a detection layer on top that detects if a student breaks the full screen mode, closes the lid, uses any specific applications, and this is a layer that we can flexibly improve. So we do see on a system level if there's any application opened at the same time of the exam. By having prevention detection, you reach a very high fraud prevention level. And still, we think it's not enough because, we can be very good today, but what about tomorrow? Because tomorrow might be, a new OS version. I don't know, some new way students can misuse our application. And that's why we also have a response process. So you really have to act fast when there's a new bypass or is a new method cheating. So where we invested a lot in is that if there's a new fraud way or if there's a new method for students, we can roll out a new security mechanism, a detection or prevention in real time, without students having to update. So updating needs to be immediately. And the last point is that it's an ongoing cat and mouse game. It's not finished. That's I think the biggest realization. It's constantly playing the cat and mouse game, tracking online forums, seeing what these professional companies, because you have professional cheating bypass companies, check what they're doing. We're in the same Discord channels, see what they're doing, and we really want to stay ahead. So the integration with Möbius and Safe Exam Workspace, our product, makes sure that Möbius is opened if you enable it. We're going to demonstrate in a minute is that it's in a secure exam workspace. We call it the Safe Exam Workspace. It's similar for every device, right? Even if you use any other apps like Excel or other applications, everyone has the same environment. And during the exam or assessment time, there's no way to, use the clipboard to bring in or bring out content. You cannot make print screens. You cannot use any personal files. The internet is shut off, so you cannot use any other tools that have internet access. We block AI tools and much more, screen sharing tools. There's a long list of stuff that we're doing. But I think the best way to show how it works is to demonstrate it in a video. Let me go to the next video. It's actually hard to demonstrate our product because we block screen sharing tools, of course, but let me open it full screen. So We first start with the instructor side. You log in as normal. As an instructor, you go to your class, open the assignment, and then hit edit. So in the property sections, that's the place where you can enable Safe Exam Workspace. You have to set a start and end time, the assessment. That's important. Click Save, and then you can require the school year browser. And then there's it's going fast. There's a little button saying Settings. So if you want to allow additional content besides Möbius, so if you don't do this, Möbius is fully secured. So everything what's in Möbius is secure. But let's say you want to allow some additional websites, you can do this in the settings widget. So for example, for this demo, we've enabled digitalet.com. You can actually go quite custom with the URLs, but this is just for an example to add any URLs that students can use during the assessment. You also can attach a PDF file, for example, file to be used. And you can also allow desktop apps. And this is an important and very complex way of, a complex product. You can actually allow real desktop environment with applications next to Möbius. So this can be configured by your institution. You can have combinations of applications. You can anything. You can configure any combination of application here. And that will be able to be used by students without installing it on their own device. I have not enabled it for this exam or this demo, but it's just to highlight that this is possible. And then we click Save. So now we're moving to the student side. So this is a student. Oh, it's going fast. This is a student having a Windows laptop, but we also support Mac, of course, managed Chromebooks. The student can open and start just as usual, how they would start Möbius. So they navigate in their personal browser to Möbius, log in, navigate to their assignment, request authorization, and then you will be forwarded to school year. And this is the school year onboarding page. We've invested a lot of time in this because we want to, make it as smooth as possible. You might be familiar with other lockdown tools, and it's always a challenge with students downloading software. So we have actually laptop check, where students can test if the laptop is suited for their exam or assessment. And we also check if it's actually installed. If there's an update, or let's say we do a security update, it will automatically update here with time. But on this demo, we already installed it. And we give a warning, hey, please save your work because school year will close all running applications. You cannot have any old application in the background because that's a risk for cheating. And then the way how we do this, we log you out on Windows. And once you log in again, you have a clean, full screen school year environment, Safe Exam Workspace. And you can right away jump into the assessment of Möbius. So it's working as usual. You can use any question types as normal. It's a full browser that you can, just like a normal browser. So I'm highlighting here some of the questions. But more important, what if you open another website? So maybe I'm going quick here, but we've actually allow listed digitalet.com for this demo. So the student is able to open a new tab and go to digitalet.com. So you have full access to that website. But if I trying to go to, let's say, chatgpt.com, this navigation is blocked. There is actually a dashboard where you see all these steps of the student. And then last but not least is the attachment that we've added. So I've added an attachment as a PDF file. You can open it next to Möbius in the browser. And then I'm moving through the assessment and then quit and save. And then school year will show you the exit pop-up right away. And you will be logged out. And once you log in again, you will back in your normal device. I think that's my, let's go to the next slide. I think, oh, starting over here. Can we go to the next slide? This is my part of the demo. Are you able to,
Okay.
Christina, to go to the next slide?
I would like to. Okay, let's see if there's a way out of this. There we go. Uh, there we go. Can everyone see the screen then properly?
Yes.
Yes, wonderful. Okay, so as we move to so thank you, Wim, of course, that was wonderful. So as we move to the QA portion of the webinar, we'll remind you all of these layers of defense and depth strategy, starting with this layer of trust, providing that clear communication of academic integrity policies to the students so that you can avoid those unintentional violations there, of course, adding on the level of variety to avoid those blind copying entirely and making sure that there's a way that students have something different to work through from each other students and something that's unique. And then, of course, adding another layer of a deterrence, so making sure the undesirable behavior is harder to do so. And of course, that layer of prevention that Wim showed us just now to do that final safeguard against the higher stakes. And again, when those stakes are so high, these violations are especially egregious. So we're happy to take your questions. I'll move it to Johnny now to take over and navigate the last part of our webinar.
Thank you, Christina. And while I answer some of the Q&A questions, I am going to launch a second poll question, basically asking if there are any tools that people are currently using today to assure academic integrity. So, like related to online homework or assignments, different exams, what tools are you using today to assure academic integrity, if any? While you're answering that, I will, ask a few questions that came through the Q&A window or through the chat. The one question that we're getting quite a few times is, when will Mobius have this connection available to school year safe exam workspace? So I think, Christina, that might be one that you could answer.
Yeah. Yes, no, thank you. It's a great question. Thank you for queuing us up for that question. It's available officially. It will be on the December 3rd, the 2025 release that we have on December 3rd with Mobius. So that's when the official launch will be. We're presenting it early now so that we have the opportunity to talk to all of you and make sure that we have the opportunity to test out your needs as well and talk it out. But it'll be commercially available in just a couple of weeks.
Great. And I think related to that, though, just to be clear with certain things is that, will it just be, will the safe exam workspace just be there in a few weeks, or will there have to be a conversation between both companies to kind of get things set up and
Oh,
connected?
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that clarification. It's an integration. It is School Year is a partner of ours. If you're interested in that product as an extension or as combining the two together, definitely want to have a conversation with the School Year team to see how it best fits your needs and making sure that you have all the onboarding support because it is something that they're the experts in. We want to ensure that they have the opportunity to assess your environment and add it appropriately.
Thank you. Yeah, and for Wim, I do have a question. It's a long question, so I'm going to summarize it. But does
Okay.
school year safe exam workspace prevent against software solutions such as virtual machines, keyboard shortcuts? Even if a student tries to like change the system time zones or use desktop shortcuts or scripting, how does I know it's a loaded question, but essentially aside from other programs or websites, does it work against other safe, potential avenues to exploit the software?
So these are actually the basic ones. So the short keys and the scripts and the sticky keys, that's the basic layer. So we are seeing two type of cheaters. Actually, the smart student, that's just handy. They know how to combine tools. They know how the tools in Windows and Mac are working and trying to find a new way, um, to circumvent our app. And then we have the real hacker person, and they're actually trying to break our application. So we have multiple layers in our application to prevent that. So you can actually try our software at home to test it. but the security mechanisms will be silent mode. So it's really thought out. We've built it really from scratch to answer on the existing cheating methods now available, and we're definitely not finished. So but the ones that you're mentioning there, we're definitely preventing them. So we're actually seeing much more advanced type of bypasses available. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, I
I
think that
hope.
was great. And
Okay.
there's a question here as well. Um, yeah, for Christina and Wim, I don't know how to phrase it properly, but a common way that Mobius is used by our by clients is integrated into a learning management system. Are there any issues using the Safe Exam Workspace with Mobius if it's inside of, for example, Canvas or Brightspace?
I can answer that, Christina, if you want.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
So
was gonna say I'll start with you, and I could follow up if there's anything extra.
no, so we have, of course, integration with multiple dedicated assessment platforms, and we are at the end of the integration. So you can start in your LMS, going to Möbius, and then end up in school year. So it will not change the flow for students. So there's no risk in that. There's no problem with that. I mean, yeah,
Okay.
it will work as normal.
Okay. I think that's it. Yeah, that's good. Okay.
Yeah, that covers it. Yeah.
Yeah, there is another question here. And I was talking to Yannick from School Year. The question is around Wim for you is Um, School year obviously works on for students to bring their own device, it sounds like, but what about if the school manages the devices they use, like a lab?
Right.
Does school year have experience working with the IT departments to get it rolled out or things like that? It sounds like it might be a roadblock for some people. How would school year help
Yeah.
these people trying to adopt your solution?
Yeah. So we actually build our solution to bring your own device first because it's unavoidable for institutions to have only managed devices, right? So you always need a percentage bring your own device, but there are many institutions that have mainly managed devices as well. So we support both. We have both customers that are fully managed, but but most institutions are hybrid. So they combine managed computers, managed labs, can be trolleys with laptops, um, and with bring your own device. We work on both. So
Okay.
it's more of a preference of the institution itself.
Okay. And we have time for one more question. It's around accessibility. So I can answer at least from a Mobius perspective. We do follow guidelines for WCAG AA compliance. We have that fully documented, and we can always share it with clients when they're asked. And it's even publicly available on digitalt.com. Wim, I'm not familiar, but school year and accessibility. Do you have any guidelines you follow or any kind of things that you're working towards?
So the nice part is that we don't interfere with the interface of Möbius, right? So um, we are a browser, and any accessibility tools you have in the browser can be used there. But I know also that there are many ways of doing accessibility. So it also depends on the tools you're using. And that's why it's important that we always have a conversation with the institution, what kind of tool they're using. Um, but accessibility is a very important part of assessments. One of the things, how we run applications, for example. So I told you in the demo that we are able to run applications besides Möbius, is that everyone has the same version, has an uniform environment. So there's also already an accessibility benefit.
Yeah, I just to add to that, I think it's really important to underscore. This is one of the reasons why we wanted to make sure that we partner with School Year as well. They take this very seriously, but just as Wim said, accessibility has a checklist that we follow, and you can make something inaccessible in Mobius just as much as you can make it accessible. So I think it's very important that if there are specific needs that you have, please just contact us. There's always an opportunity for us to figure out what's the best way to implement the tools that you're using, and that goes for both of our organizations. The accessibility changes and tools evolve, and so do we. So if there's ever anything that you have a question about how is something being operated or used within your environment, contact us and let's have that conversation and see what we can do to support what you need if it isn't immediately obvious how we support it.
Okay. And for anybody else who's asked questions, I do apologize. We've run out of time, and I tried to respond to everyone through texting as well. If I didn't, we will respond to you afterwards through email, or like I mentioned, we can always set up a separate time to jump on a Zoom call quickly. But thank you for everyone who joined us today. Our emails are on the screen for Digital Ed if you want to reach out to us, marketing@digitaled.com, and we'll be sure to get back to you. Or if you want to reach out to Schoolyear directly, team@schoolyear.com. Regardless, though, of that, we will be reaching out to everyone to provide you with a recording of the webinar. Whether you were here live or you're watching the recording, thank you again. And with that, I hope everyone has a great rest of the week. And if you have any questions, information we'll leave up for another minute or two. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.